Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to Illegal Alien Racing. Today's video is for those of you that are looking for some tips on how to get a faster lap at Dallas Karting Complex. So what I did is I took the same lap and we're going to analyze it a couple of different times, and I'm going to show you what lines I take. I've got a camera on my feet so you can see when I brake, when I accelerate, all that stuff. And hopefully some of these tips will help you get a better lap at DKC. All right, so for this first lap, I'm not going to talk through it. I'm just going to let it play one full lap. Just pay attention to the lines I'm taking and what my feet are doing. Before we analyze this lap, I want to get a couple of things out of the way. Number one, this video is just an example of how I drive a lap at DKC. There's other people that run really good laps at DKC that may have a little bit of a different style than I do. This is just how I do it. Number two, don't make the mistake of thinking that you're going to run the same lap times in the summer months as you will in the cooler months. These karts run a lot better in the cooler weather, so your lap times are going to be lower in the cooler weather as compared to the summer months. Another thing to consider too is when you're watching these tips I'm giving you is these karts all handle different. So you're gonna have to make adjustments on braking, acceleration, lines, things like that based on how your kart's handling and what the track conditions are like. So a fast lap at Dallas Karting Complex gets set up a few turns before you hit the straightaway. Because once you hit the straightaway, you want to be carrying as much speed as possible. These karts take a second for them to wind up, so you want to have as much momentum as possible. So this turn here is 5 turns before the straightaway. And like I was saying, you have to make adjustments depending on the weather. So when I filmed this video, I know I'm wearing shorts, but a cold front had come through, and it was in the high 50s. So this kart was running really good. Normally on this right-hander, I can stay flat out if the kart's handling great. Now, in this one, the kart was running really good. It handled pretty good as well, but I felt that I had to roll off the throttle about halfway when I was making this right-hander to make sure that I controlled the kart and I wasn't, exiting too wide. So I want to really get set up for this next turn. So this next turn right here is super important. I know a lot of people think they lose time in other corners, and you're probably right, but I see a lot of people losing time on this corner. A key here, there's 2 techniques that I use. I either just hit the brakes really quick and get back on the accelerator, or I roll off the throttle and just coast, and I let the turning of the kart scrub off the speed. And you don't want to turn in too soon, because what I see people do is turn in too soon, and then they get jammed up in this next left-hander right here, and they're just in bad position. So I know it sometimes feels like you're going slow through there, but it's important to be smooth through there and not get the car out of position, because again, you're trying to keep as much momentum as possible. And then on this left-hander here, hit the apex, and you're going to end up out in the blue right here. And then this little point right here is where I like to position the kart, right on the edge of where the blue paint meets the grass and meets the track. So you're set up nice, going down the straightaway, just full blast, letting the kart wind up as much as possible. So when I come into turn 1, I will jab the brakes, coast just for a little bit, and I'm looking for the apex. And in this video, I didn't quite hit it. You can see that I'm a few feet to the outside of it. Ideally, I'd like to be right by the curb, but I didn't nail this turn like I wanted to. But regardless, even if you don't nail it just like you want, you can still pull off a pretty fast lap at DKC. And as the video plays through, I exit wide, and then the next turn is a right-hander. Just make sure you're all the way to the outside to set yourself up. And I apply a little brake and get on the accelerator and just cruise through there. This next left-hander, just stay on the accelerator full blast. You can be right by the curb, or you can kind of be where I'm at. I don't see that it really affects your lap time tremendously. Now on the exit of this turn, I don't like to get out into the paint here or the rumble strips. Ideally, I like to be right by the rumble strips. It just feels better for me, and it feels like I'm in more control, which is gonna set me up for the next turn. Now this next turn for me is flat out, but if you turn too soon or wait to turn too late, it can really mess you up for getting through here real smooth. So, unless you're comfortable doing it, and say you're a beginner, you may want to roll off the throttle a little bit and just navigate your way through here as you get more comfortable. But I've been out there a whole lot, and I've got a bunch of laps at DKC, so I go full throttle through here. And you want to be on the apex here, and then you're making a straight line for the next turn. Just like that right there. And sometimes when I exit wide like I did here, or sometimes I'm in the middle of the track. I think either exit's fine. Again, it depends on how the cart's handling that day. This next turn here, just make sure I'm right by the curb. Now this next turn coming up is a left-hander, and it's a really tricky turn. I think a lot of people struggle here, and it's somewhere where I can probably improve on a little bit. So some people just roll off the throttle and turn and let the turning scrub off the speed. What I've found works best for me is just jab the brake real quick, get back on the gas. So what I'll do is I'll jab the brake and then turn the cart, and I'm back on the accelerator 100% through the turn. Now the exit here is pretty important. Some people like to be by the curb down on the left. I think ideally for me, I like to be somewhere towards the middle of the track. I feel that it lets the cart stay wound up a little bit more, and I think you're maybe scrubbing a little bit of speed by being down low, but that's up for debate. People do it different ways. So through here, you're full throttle, coming out to that right-hander. Like I said, sometimes I just keep it flat out through here and make the turn, no problem. But today the cart was running pretty fast, so I rolled off the throttle about 50% and navigated the turn. Again, this little S section, just be really smooth through there. Take your time, get on the throttle right about that apex of that turn, and just stay full throttle through there. And make sure you position yourself nicely through there, exit wide. Boom, there's your mark that I was talking about earlier. So following those basic guidelines should get you a pretty fast lap. So a few other tips I think will help you are, experiment. So let's say that you want to work on turn one. So you go out on a session, take a lap or two and warm the tires up. Once the tires are up to temperature, for the next 2 laps, take the same line or use the same braking point in, let's say, turn one. And then the 2 laps after that, change it up and try something else. And for those next 2 laps, keep that consistent. So then when you get your lap times, you can go back and look and figure out, which line or which braking point was faster for you. And then, session over session, just work on different corners. And I would recommend just working on 1 corner at a time per session. Now, people are going to say the only way to get faster is seat time. And what seat time means, if you don't know, is just driving. Now, I 100% agree with that. But I know for me, something that helped accelerate my learning was, filming and recording my sessions on a GoPro or whatever camera you have. And what I would do is go back home, figure out which lap time was really good for me, and I would watch that lap over and over and over and over. And I go back and watch other laps that maybe weren't as good and kind of compare and figure out what I did right or what I did wrong. At the same time, kind of visualizing and feeling what the cart felt like when I was running a good lap. And all that's doing in my opinion, is just giving you repetition. Just like a football, quarterback watches game film, he's getting repetitions. I don't think this is any different. I think going out there is and watching these videos, although it's not a substitute for driving, it's a lot better than doing nothing and just relying on driving only to help improve you. Another thing, and probably the last thing I'll say, is just take your time. I know that it can be frustrating. It can feel like you're going slow, going through certain corners, but I used to come in full blast in certain corners and it felt great going in, but the cart would get all upset and I would ruin my line. So the exit was just really bad and it ended up really affecting my lap time. So just take your time and gradually build up, your technique and your driving style. And I think you'll be, pretty consistent. And in turn, that's going to help you get a better lap time. The last thing I want to say is this. If you can figure out how to run a fast lap time at Dallas Karting Complex or whatever track you go to, don't think that it's going to translate into you being a fast racer, because the game is completely different once you're around other karts and you're racing for position versus just running the track by yourself and you get to go wherever you want to go. It's two different things, so just don't make the mistake of thinking that because you can run a really fast lap, like a top 10 weekly or monthly lap at whatever track you go to, that you're going to go into their rental league or whatever they have and you're going to just dominate, because that's not true. All right, I hope those tips help you get a faster lap time at Dallas Karting Complex. Thanks for watching. As always, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And for those of you that support the channel and always watch the videos, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you. We'll see you next time.